You are listening to the Marketing 32 Show with your host, Brett Allen.
Hi, Brett Allen here, host of the Marketing 32 Show, where I connect with leading dentists, dental influencers, and industry experts to uncover the latest and greatest. As you guys know, we're all about value here at Marketing 32. This episode is brought to you by our team here at Marketing 32. As you know, we are the only dental marketing team that I know of that is truly performance driven. We have a performance guarantee that if you're not growing, you don't pay. It's that simple. So reach out to us if you're looking to grow your practice with an ethical marketing team with predictable results. Head over to marketing32.com, set up that call. Let's help you out and see if it's a good fit for both of us. Quick shout out to Doug Fettig. Recently had him on the show. We talked about leadership advice, mindset, making impact in the industry, and abundance. I'm all about abundance. It was a great episode. Check that one out. Today, I'm excited to have a new friend of mine on the show, Dr. Stephen Katz. He is a practice growth coach and founder of Dental Excellence Advisory with over 35 years of experience as the owner of an award-winning dental practice. He's a graduate of Columbia University and Washington University School of Dental Medicine. He has coached over 160 practices to more than 300 million in revenue growth, you guys. A lot of value we'll be talking about today. Dr. Katz has delivered over 500 presentations to 60,000 plus dental professionals, and he is the author of the acclaimed book, They Didn't Teach Us That in Dental School. He's also a certified personal trainer now and a competitive rower. Dr. Katz, great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Great to be here, Brett. And just want to mention that I love your concept of performance-based marketing. It's so comforting to dentists who often complain that they've spent a lot of money and not gotten any return.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Marketing is nebulous. It's hard to kind of pin down what's working. Will it work for me? And we try to avoid all that by saying, you know what, we're invested in you as well. And we've got systems and processes in place that work very well in particular markets with certain doctors. And so let's have that conversation, see if we can be a good fit to help you grow. So, yeah. Yeah, that last part in your bio, competitive rower, that was something that stuck out to me when we first met in Rhode Island at the SCN event. You were telling me about how you were a rower in college. Let's talk about your background. Like, how did you come from rowing and college, get into dentistry, and now transition into being an advisor?
College to play football, but very early on in my first season, I got seriously hurt. I had an athletic scholarship. The athletic department was kind enough to me that they enabled me to switch sports, and the crew was suggested because the movement would be good therapy for me. And I liked it. The only problem was I was a 5'8", 250-pound offensive lineman, which made me heavy enough to become a lightweight, but not tall enough. And so back in college, I had to lose 70 pounds more to become a lightweight.
That's a bit.
And that's what I did my last 3 years. Then, dental school and professional training and my career hit. And I ballooned back up to the 240 to 260 range my whole life until a couple of years ago, a teammate called me up and said that Columbia was going to have an alumni race in the fall of 2024 and would I want to participate? And at the time I said, I didn't think I could. I've had 7 shoulder surgeries. I was overweight, out of shape, poorly controlled diabetic, high blood pressure. I said there was no way. And being a very good teammate, he turned to me and said, you did it once, you can do it again. And that's when I rejoined a gym, started training 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. Last October, I rode my first 2,000-meter race in 47 years. Wow. I got hooked, rode a bunch of races in the fall, this spring. And now this fall, I'm actually enrolled to row a couple of long distance races. So my training has gotten a little more intense. And I just think it's a continuation for me and adding to my mantra has always been find a way to make a difference in people's lives. It's really the reason that I sold my practice and moved to speaking and coaching, because back in 2014, uh, I had the opportunity to speak to 2,000 dentists at the Maddows event in Miami, TBSC. There were 2,000 dentists in that audience. And I walked away. I won an award as Best New Speaker in Dentistry. That was my first national event. And I realized that in my own practice, I had the ability to change the lives of my 2,000 or 3,000 patients. But if I could bring some of my systems, strategy, skills, philosophy of care, and get 2,000 dentists to apply it, I could conceivably be affecting the care of 2 million patients if they each had 1,000 patients.
Yeah.
And it was on the sales of that I sold my practice 3 months later and started devoting my time 100% to helping doctors grow their practices, become better leaders, learn how to improve diagnosis, increase treatment acceptance, and in doing so, make a difference in the lives of their patients, their teams, and themselves.
I love that. The impact there. We're all about impact here at Marketing 32 as well. And everything we do is driven towards impact for the practice. We call it the practice impact formula is our process. I think that's great that you've made that transition and you're helping not only the docs, but like you said, their patients. So let's dig deeper into that. When you work with now as an advisor, you're working with your clients. What are some of the things that you tackle with them? What are some of the biggest wins that you can have with them? I mean, 300 million in production, that's quite a bit of impact. Let's dig into some of your tactics.
Well, there are 5 ways to grow a practice. You should always be looking to increase your number of new patients. And that's certainly where you come in with Marketing 32. But marketing can cost some money.
Yep.
Second way is to increase the number of high profit procedures you do. Look at what you offer. If you're not doing aligner therapy, ortho, if you're not at least restoring implants, but maybe placing them as well. If you're not treating sleep and breathing disorders, these are high revenue procedures that can easily grow a practice, but they involve the cost of training and training your team. Third way is increasing your capacity, lengthening your hours, adding more providers, expanding your office, but that can be costly. There are 2 ways of growing a practice that cost you absolutely nothing and are guaranteed to create an upward trend in what your practice can do. One is calibrating your diagnosis criteria. Number 2 is increasing treatment acceptance. If you increase either one of them, you get a direct relationship to how well you increase it to what your numbers will be. But if you can work on both of those, it's really a much different type of algorithm type curve. And they're both easy to do, but they're neglected. They're neglected by doctors, and they're typically neglected in consulting from what I've seen. And that is because truly it would be helpful if there were more doctors doing consulting and coaching. If you're going to talk about diagnosis and you're going to talk about refining diagnosis criteria, that really needs to be assisted by a doctor driving it. What we know is that offices, and this comes from analytics, I'm a huge believer in using dental intelligence. The analytics shows that 34% of patients coming through hygiene typically have something diagnosable restoratively, but there are many practices that have lower diagnosis percentages. It can be for several reasons. It could be due to a very conservative philosophy. It could be because of not paying attention. It could be because of confusion between hygienist and
Team
doctor.
doesn't know.
It
Yeah.
could be confusion between 2 doctors. One says one thing, one says another. And this sets up a, a type of lowering of confidence in patients because they're not sure which is the right way, especially when they get mixed messages.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the two parts of diagnosis are, number one, recognizing restorative opportunities, communicating about them in a consistent way, and standardizing it so that everybody within the practice has the same guidelines and has same criteria and talks about it the same way.
So let's dig a little bit on that. I think those two are awesome. So let's review that. The first is standardizing diagnosis, right? Figuring out a
Uh-huh.
way to do that. And then case acceptance, right? Those two.
Yes.
So digging into standardizing diagnosis, how do you help your team do that? Are there some tricks to doing that? Is it just, hey, let's have a monthly training on this? And then are there tricks also for the hygienists when they see that there's an opportunity for a cavity or something?
Sure.
Um, yeah, what do they say? All of
So
that.
in my earlier consulting and coaching, I saw the need for it. And what I would do is at the beginning of an engagement with a client, I would give them a thumb drive with about 50 photographs of teeth in various stages of disrepair. And I'd say, here, go through this battery of photos, come up with your diagnosis, share it with your associates, and share it with your hygienist. And I did this for several years, and then went to observe an office that I was coaching a couple of months after we had begun. And a hygienist had a photograph of a tooth up on the monitor with a crack through the lingual cusp. And they had done a very good job of explaining why that tooth was a problem, how it could become a more serious problem over time, and the benefits of taking care of it. And then the doctor came in, looked at the photograph and said, "That's not so bad. We can watch it." And
Mm.
the hair on the back of my neck stood up.
Oh man.
I asked for a copy of that photograph, and it really became my poster child. And then I said, well, how can I impress upon these doctors and team members a better way? And so I went and started going through that deck of photographs individually with the senior doctor of the practice. And what I found was that most doctors don't have a standard criteria.
They just
They
kind of
wing it.
eyeball it or wing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and, and depending on the day, depending on what their mindset is, depending on what they're planning to do outside of the practice, sometimes they diagnose, sometimes they don't. And
Mm.
so it's coming to a standardization of what is diagnosable and that we don't let those opportunities go because that's benign neglect.
Mhm.
And, most doctors are very, very conservative because no doctor wants to be thought of as being aggressive. They all want to be
Yeah.
thought of as being conservative.
Right.
But there is a huge range of diagnosis in between those two that I've
Mhm.
always called protective diagnosis.
Mhm.
Protective diagnosis is to protect the patient
Yeah, it's
from
for
having
their
disappointing
best
outcomes,
interest. Yeah.
to protect the doctor from having the patient disappointed in them.
Right.
And,
Right.
the typical examples are a doctor who says, well, we can do a filling there. And then they do a filling, because they were afraid to talk about a crown. They were afraid about the insurance not paying or about the fee or whatever potential objections the patient could have. So they downplayed it and gave a lesser treatment option. And then 6 months or 9 months later, the patient comes back with either a cusp broken off or sensitivity. And really, it's because the diagnosis was too
Yeah.
conservative at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And patients are more likely to accept the correct diagnosis at the time that you do the evaluation. If you run into situations, and I see it when I observe doctors all the time, where they say one thing, maybe a more conservative treatment, a 3-surface resin, and then during the appointment, it turns into a crown. Well, the patient is
They don't want
never
that.
happy there.
Yeah, that's a
They view
surprise.
that as a bait and switch.
Right. Right.
Or a tooth that, you're not sure how far the decay goes down, and what you've said in the originally is, this is a deep filling and there's a slight chance that it could possibly, maybe, perhaps need a root
Yeah.
canal. And then it turns into a root canal at the time. The patient doesn't remember all of that cautioning that you did.
Right.
So why not make the more comprehensive diagnosis from the beginning and then set yourself up to be a hero?
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that a lot of problems down the road come about because doctors were too conservative because they were afraid to present what the patient really needed. And then it breeds resentment down the road when it doesn't go well. But, so changing, I have a saying I enjoy that when you tell a patient what they're going to do before they do it, it's a diagnosis. When you tell them what you're going to be doing during or after you've started it, it becomes an excuse.
Mm.
And so what I propose is if you think there's even a chance that a tooth could potentially need a root canal, include that root canal in your original treatment plan.
Yeah.
Now, I hesitate with this because it's really dependent on doctor ethics. I took great pride in being able to avoid the more aggressive treatment, typically the root canal in a case like that. But if it ends up being a root canal, you look good. You made the correct diagnosis. And if you feel at the time of preparation that you were not near an exposure, that there weren't any cracks that were of concern, now you can sit the patient up at the end and tell them good news, Mrs. Jones, because you were a great patient, because I worked very carefully, we were able to avoid that root canal that was on your treatment plan. So you'll be able to save
Yeah.
$1,500.
Yeah, that's a
And
much
they
better
love you.
news to share than, oh, hey, you got to pay $1,500 now because we figured out you need a root canal.
Sure. And I learned that because I did a lot of sedation in my office. And so
Yeah.
I would put a patient to sleep and I would be doing a whole arch of restorations.
Oh, wow.
And if I had a root canal or two that was not on the original treatment plan, that was always a difficult phone call the day after when they were more alert, saying,
Yeah.
everything went very well, but we did have to do 2 additional root canals. And so it's going to be another $4,000,
Right. Yeah.
as
Nobody wants to
opposed
hear that.
to calling them up the day after a procedure and
Yeah.
telling them that, where maybe we said that there were going to be 3 or 4 root canals in that full arch of dentistry, and calling them the day after and saying, Mrs. Jones, I have good news for you. Because
Mhm.
we worked under a situation with you being sedated, I was able to be very careful. Everything went extremely well. And actually, I was able to avoid 2 of the root canals.
Yeah.
And when you come in to have your case delivered, we'll have a $4,000 refund for you.
That's awesome. I love that approach. So would you consider all of that, would that all be bundled under standardizing diagnosis and case
That would be
presentation? Kind
more
of like
under
a,
the diagnosis
okay.
end of it.
Yeah, I like that you're taking that approach. It's proactive. While I think a lot of doctors may shy away from the challenging conversation of trying to sell somebody on something. And
Yeah,
maybe
and
that's
because
why they avoid it. They just want to be conservative and say, "Yeah, we don't have to do this. I don't want to charge you any money. Let's take it easy here."
and we
But
also talk about the importance of using your diagnostics properly, making sure your X-rays are adequate, making sure there's no
yeah,
overlap on the bite wings, those types of things.
right.
What I found in doing these with my comprehensive coaching programs, this was one of the biggest drivers of success and practice growth. Typically, if you do 1 additional crown a day in a practice, that's $200,000 over the course of a year.
Big lift.
And that
Yeah.
practice that I mentioned in the beginning, where, I questioned the diagnosis and we did this exercise between the senior doctor and the associate, they started doing between 4 and 6 more crowns a day. That's $1 million jump for a practice in 1
Wow.
year. And that's
Yeah.
$1 million in 1 year. If you compound that over 10 years, which is
Wow.
the
Yeah, it
residuals of
becomes
making a change like
yeah.
that, that's over $10 million revenue, additional
Yeah,
revenue for the
and you're not
practice.
even considering also the potential referrals that you get by doing good dentistry and helping people with their oral health, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
And then
I
what I
love that
saw
you mentioned about that because we have one of our clients. We've been working with him for like 8 years now. Great doctor out of Phoenix, Arizona, Dr. Jazorski. Um, he bought his fourth practice, and in that acquisition process, he realized the doc was being very, very conservative, not doing any treatments really. It's just hygiene operation.
Hmm.
And he was really excited about it because he knew his patients were, it was a disservice to those patients, and he knew there was growth potential there, and just diagnosing proper treatment. And so
Sure.
I
And it
think in the first
applies.
few months, he tripled production in that practice just by recommending treatment, not unethically, but treatment that was needed.
Well, we talk about numbers. I really don't care about production. I don't care about collection. I don't care about receivables. I don't care about those numbers. What I care about, how do we raise the standard of care? How do we get patients to appreciate the value of the care? How do we learn to communicate that value? And how do we create an exceptional experience?
Mm.
And when you do those things, you don't have to pay attention to the numbers. The growth comes organically. The numbers we refer to really are just a measurement of how many patients are making better decisions about their own health. And most people need help in doing so. That's the treatment acceptance part. But with the diagnosis, when I saw that this technique was working, this exercise was working so well with our clients, it actually became an a la carte offering that I've done,
Mm.
where we can just do a Zoom meeting just to go over diagnosis criteria. And that in itself has, if a doctor can increase 1 or 2 crowns even a week because of improved diagnosis, that's a huge, huge benefit. And
Yeah,
the cost of that program is about the cost of a single crown. So
nice.
the return on investment could be
Way,
hundreds.
way good. Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, you've shared tons of value so far. Let's transition a little bit into, you're not doing a lot of dentistry anymore. You're doing more uh, physical training, right? You're a physical trainer now?
It's about 50-50 right now.
Okay,
I,
okay.
I I love the fact that I've been able to regain my health and regain some vitality. Um, I love when I'm the oldest guy in the gym.
Yeah, yeah.
In my race, in my shell of alumni, I'm the oldest one by 19 years.
Wow, okay.
And, I love the fact that I can keep up with them.
That's
And,
awesome.
I went into this whole thing with two goals: to row that one alumni race and not drown and not have a heart attack. And
Oh,
I've
I'm sure the
blown
health
through those
benefits have been
goals
great.
pretty easily. And I'm really just enjoying the return to fitness. I'm enjoying the competition. When I was 7 years old, my dad introduced me to golf. He said, "You may not like this game, but someday it'll be the only thing that you can play competitively." And I was starting to think that the last few years until I got
Uh,
back into rowing.
yeah, for those of you who aren't watching the YouTube or any of the videos we've got, Dr. Katz behind him has this wall of golf balls. And so you can tell he's a golfer. In fact, that one above your head, you were just telling a story. Tell us about that one. That was a hole in one, right?
Yes. So I used to be a long driver. I used to enter long drive competitions, and that ball above my head on the right side
Yeah.
is my hole in one ball from a 326-yard par four.
That's awesome. That's way cool.
I didn't see it go in the hole, but I
You
knew
just
something was up when the guys who were walking off the green in front of us started jumping up and down.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool.
I sprinted the length of that fairway to see it, and then realized I had to go back to the tee to get my stuff.
Oh gosh, that's quite a bit. That's a good exercise. Oh man. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I always close. We're about out of time, but I always close and tons of value, you guys. If you're picking this up, this is great. And one more question for you that we'll close on. What's one bit of advice you can give? One thing that if they could have this epiphany would have a huge impact for their practice or their life. What's that one thing you can share with us today that would do that?
What I see often is doctors with their associates, doctors with their hygienists. And it ends up being time after time after time, they're giving instruction on what should have been, what could have been, correcting things that weren't particularly right or could have
Reactive.
been better. And I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer, invest in the front end so you don't have to waste time on the back end. Spend time with your young associates and make sure that you're both you're on the same page with diagnostics. Do the same thing with hygienists. Make it to the point where they think like you think. Because if they're thinking the way you do, you're going to have less to do during your hygiene checks. You're going to have less to do in development of these cases. With the hygienists in my practice, when they join the practice, aside from working with diagnosis, what I would do is I would have them sit in with me on my treatment planning sessions when I would actually create my treatment plans, because I wanted them to understand the scope of a comprehensive case, that you oftentimes have to open up the occlusion. You have to restore what is the proper orientation. And when they started to understand how I thought through the planning of these cases, they were much better able to speak to a patient about the benefits of doing that scope of treatment. And I didn't have to repeat it time and time again. And it ended up being over time that my hygienist could actually treatment plan a full mouth reconstruction for me before I ever walked into a room.
That's way
That's
cool.
not to say I do believe that the time of a doctor with patient is invaluable
Right.
and
Right.
should not be missed. It's why I train my clients that the first appointment in office should not be in the hygienist chair. It should be in the doctor's chair. Create that relationship, because if you create a relationship that builds that type of trust, they don't second guess you. If you have that relationship, they view you as a friend, and a friend makes recommendations based on the benefits to the party, not to
Right.
themselves.
That trust. I love that. That's so valuable. Some great leadership advice there. Philosophy, work on the front end, invest in your team,
Mhm.
transfer that knowledge and expertise onto your team, and then doing right by the patient, being truly invested in their oral health and building that connection, those relationships. I think that's, if you look at the practices that are knocking it out of the park, we work with several that are doing multi-million. They've got this down. They've got the great patient experience, the great team interaction. They're leaders. They're not just reactive with their team.
But
But
look
this,
look at the staff meetings that
yes,
we have. Most offices don't have them.
yep,
Many have them and they become gripe sessions. But the really great offices have meetings where the doctor is just a a, a, a viewing it, and it's going around with it.
the
If
team
it's
is
a
leading the
team
practice.
led practice
Yeah,
where everybody has their area that they're going to report on, that they're going to teach, and it's just a sharing of information. That's the practice that's going to grow and continue to grow no matter what happens outside in the economy or
right.
in your geographical area.
I love that. Well, there's certainly a lot more I know you could share with us, and there's a lot more that people could get from you to grow their practice, and even from a leadership standpoint, like we're talking about at the end here.
Mhm.
Um, Best way for them to get in touch with you, send them to your website, and they can reach out to you there.
Website is fine. Email Dr.
Okay.
Katz at dental excellence advisory.com, or feel free to text or call me on my cell 516-524-7573, and really take advantage of that a la carte diagnosis program. It can be very, very impactful. It's very affordable, but it really can set the stage for a tremendous amount of growth very easily.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Katz. Again, that website is dentalexcellenceadvisory.com. And if you're driving, we'll put all this in the show notes. You can go back and get his cell phone later. But I always love it when our listeners can reach out directly through text. That's the best medium, I think. Yeah. Thank you again, Dr. Katz, for coming on the show. This has been great.
My pleasure, Brad. It was really great meeting you at SCN and the
Yep.
relationship that we've built since then.
Yeah. Thanks again. Everybody, until next time on the Marketing 32 Show, have a great day. Take care.